You open your book talking about the Twin Cities Somali community. Now, my concern is, number one, you got a Somali community of 100,000. They're not all terrorists. Let's make that clear. And you've got the Mall of America, which is a symbol of consumerism in America. But there are hundreds, perhaps thousands of malls across America. And you feel that the Mall of America could certainly be in the target of radicals. Am I right there?
You're absolutely right, Jan. Look, it's the largest mall in the United States, number one. Number two, the Somali group Al-Shabaab, the al-Qaeda-linked Somali group Al-Shabaab, has specifically called for attacks against the Mall of America.
Yes.
And what we have, as we discussed earlier today, was, look, you have that large Somali Muslim population which lives within a stone's throw of the Mall of America, which has, as we've seen, responded to the call of Al-Shabaab, the call of ISIS. So sadly, yes, the Mall of America is a potential target. God forbid anything would happen, but it's an appealing target to the bad guys without a doubt.
But are all malls, particularly if they're significant, are all of them sort of a target?
Of course. Think back to Nairobi, Kenya in September 2013, Jan and Eric, where we had a horrific attack carried out again by the Somali terror group Al-Shabaab, where they specifically targeted Westerners, specifically targeted, actually, Christians. They asked people if they were Muslim or Christian. If they answered they were Christian, they were killed on the spot.
Okay, moving on here, I did want to hit on social media before our time gets away, because this seems to be the vehicle that these guys are riding, and not only are they riding social media, but they're very good with technology, and apparently, and you bring this out in the book, by the way, ISIS Exposed, and that's what we're talking about this hour. Folks, find it in your local bookstore. Olive Tree's not carrying the book this time, but I'm promoting the book big time because it's quite an education about the phenomenon of our time. But Eric, focusing on social media, you say Twitter is the voice of the Islamic State. Okay, folks at Twitter, why don't you shut down some of these accounts? Do you have any insight, Eric Stakelback?
It's a great question. Number one, I can tell you, Jan, that Twitter has received threats from ISIS. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but, you know, it's tough. I guess there's so many of these jihadist accounts. I don't know if Twitter can keep track of all of them. It seems like one is shut down, another one pops up. But I have to tell you, I think Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube in particular, do a very poor job of monitoring these extremist accounts. And they're not shutting them down at a rapid enough clip. I think, look, if they're having a tough time keeping track of them all, guess what? Hire more people whose sole responsibility is to monitor these accounts and take them down right away. I think there's no excuse for it. I think also, look, the government needs to be a little bit more proactive. Go after the domain names. Go after the people who are hosting different websites and different accounts. And I think lastly, Jan and Eric, we need a counter-propaganda effort. Why isn't the U.S. government putting together a massive propaganda effort countering the ideology of ISIS online? Use social media against them. You know, a major reason why? Because the president won't even acknowledge that ideology exists.
It's true. The ironic thing is, Eric and Eric, for instance, Olive Tree Ministries is monitored on Facebook and sometimes censored. We're not saying anything out of line. If we make comments about you on our Facebook, Eric Stakelback, they'll probably censor that.
Yeah.
But they don't come against some of the radicals. What we're talking about here now is Twitter, because you say Twitter is the voice of the Islamic State. My goodness, if we can't go to the head of the snake, let's go there. Let's go to Twitter.
Yeah. Jan, that's
shut them down.
We are not PC. We refuse to be PC. We will not be. PC is going to destroy what the church is, let alone what the country is, if we acquiesce to it. And of course, we've got to go along with the crowd. And if we say things that are against the grain, that they don't like it, they want to shut you and I and anybody else down that says these things. And of course, if our voice is silenced in a place like Facebook, as much as I think it's a pariah on the internet, even though I have a Facebook page, I don't go there and sit there and make that my, I don't have the time to do that. Who has the time? Who in the world? That goes back to part of the problem that Eric mentioned. It sounded like he was quoting me, although we've never spoken about that. When he said, people are interested in playing with their iPhones and so on. They're interested in who won the Super Bowl. Not that I'm not. being a Seattle fan. But, the idea of American Idol and these things have taken place of the seriousness of what's going on in the culture. We have this whole group of people coming up behind us in that generation my daughter is in. They don't have the mindset to be looking out for what is happening around us in the political and the geopolitical world, let alone our own safety. And for that, I believe they would be more than willing, because of their lack of understanding of the Constitution, to throw up their hands and say, sure, we can change everything. Just throw the Constitution out. Just keep me safe so I can have my iPhone and be on Facebook and have my own fun. That seems to be the attitude. And in my mind, that is the thing that we in our generation and anyone listening need to eradicate from those around us. Do everything we can to speak against that kind of ideology.
Well, I agree. I think we have many Americans, and especially millennials, God bless them, who are asleep on these issues. And, I feel bad in many ways because they're being willfully misled by the government, or by the mainstream media. Who can they trust? Who can they listen to? They're being fed the wrong information about the threats we face. I almost feel like a generation of Americans has been lulled to sleep by technology and entertainment. And we're in a dangerous place right now. What we really need, obviously, is revival in this country. But my fear is that revival won't come unless, God forbid, there's some kind of calamity.
I agree.
After 9/11, people were filling the pews of churches for weeks. And then it kind of petered out. So I do not want to see something like that happen again to be the wake-up call that we need. Because right now, we are asleep. We're a slumbering giant in many ways. And instead of turning to God, it seems that as a nation, we're shaking our fist at God.